I want to start today by asking you to do something a little weird.
Okay.
I want you to close your eyes for a second, unless you're driving or, operating heavy machinery. Please don't do that. But if you can, just pause for a moment and close your eyes.
Right, I'm with you.
Now, I want you to just summon up the image of God in your mind.
That's a big request right off the bat.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But seriously, what do you see? What flashes into your head? Is it a blinding white light? Do you see, like, a stern judge in a wig holding a gavel? Or maybe a very grandfatherly figure, with a long white beard sitting on a cloud?
Or maybe just nothing. A kind of vague energy field.
Exactly, a vague force. And here is the kicker.
Uh-huh.
According to the book we are diving into today, that split-second image you just flashed to, it is the most important thing about you.
The most important thing about you.
Yeah.
That is the central provocative thesis of A.W. Tozer's absolute classic, The Knowledge of the Holy. And it's designed to stop you in your tracks.
It really is. I mean, honestly, when I first read that sentence, I instinctively pushed back a little. I thought, really? More important than my actions, more important than how I treat my neighbor.
More important than my job, my family, my politics.
Right. It sounds like hyperbole, doesn't it? It sounds like a preacher just trying to get your attention with a big, flashy statement.
It does. But Tozer is making a very specific psychological and spiritual argument here. He's not just being dramatic. He's saying that your God concept, that mental image, is essentially the DNA of your soul.
The DNA of my soul.
Yeah. And if that DNA is damaged or corrupted or just plain wrong, then everything that grows out of it, your morals, your mental health, your worldview, your daily anxiety levels, all of it will be mutated.
So if I view God as a kind of cosmic tyrant, then I'll probably live my life in fear, and I'll probably be tyrannical myself to the people below me in my own little sphere.
Exactly. You become what you worship. It's an old principle. If you view God as a sort of celestial Santa Claus, your faith becomes incredibly shallow, and it just collapses the moment you don't get the gift you wanted for Christmas.
Or if your God is chaotic and unpredictable, your life will feel chaotic and unpredictable.
You've got it. And what's really striking is that Tozer wrote this book back in 1961. And even then, he felt the church was already losing the plot. He identified this core problem, which he called the loss of majesty.
1961. That's fascinating to me because that feels like a relatively religious time in American history, at least compared to now. People went to church. The culture was, generally more Judeo-Christian on the surface.
Right. You'd think he was writing in, 2024. But Tozer was something of a prophet. He saw the cracks forming in the foundation long before the walls started to crumble. He saw what he called the low view of God creeping in.
A low view of God.
Yeah. He argued that we were, in effect, turning God into a utility.
A facility, like electricity, or the water company.
In a sense, yes. Think about how we treat our utilities.
Yeah.
We want the power to be on so we can watch TV, and we get angry when it's not. But we don't want to know the CEO of the power company. We have no interest in their character or their attributes.
You just want the service.
You just want the service. And Tozer's point is that we've started treating God that way. We want him to power our lives. We want him to make us successful and happy and safe. But we don't necessarily want to know him for who he is. We want the blessing, but we're not that interested in the blesser.
Wow.
And he uses this incredibly strong word to describe this. He calls it a decadent view of God.
Decadent. That's such a powerful word. It implies something is rotting or decaying from the inside out.
And he argues that this low view, this rot, is the cause of 100 lesser evils in the Christian life.
That's a bold claim. 100 lesser evils.
So let's make this personal for a second. The anxiety I feel about my job, the jealousy I feel toward my neighbor when they get something I want, the lack of discipline in my prayer life, the fact that I sometimes snap at my kids.
Tozer is tracing all of that somehow back to a bad mental picture of God.
He is. He's making a direct causal link. He argues that we are constantly trying to treat the symptoms. We try to fix our anxiety with breathing techniques or fix our sin with sheer willpower. But we are ignoring the underlying disease.
And the disease is?
The disease is that our God is too small. We are trying to navigate a hurricane in a little paper boat because we don't realize we have an anchor that goes down to the bedrock of the universe.
So the mission for this deep dive is actually, it's a rescue mission in a way.
I like that.
We're trying to rescue our own minds from the small, cheap, convenient gods we've invented for ourselves and replace them with the real thing.
Or at least as much of the real thing as our finite brains can handle without, melting. Because that's the other part of this book. It stretches you. It hurts your brain, but in the best possible way.
Well, let's get into the brain-hurting part immediately then. Section 1 covers what Tozer calls the incomprehensible God, which sounds like a paradox right out of the gate. If God is incomprehensible, why did he write a whole book about knowing him?
It is a paradox, but it's a completely necessary one. Tozer has to start here. He says that the human mind cannot simply crash past the familiar into the totally unfamiliar. We are finite creatures.
Right.
We live inside a box of time and space and cause and effect. God is the infinite creator outside that box. There is a fundamental gap there that raw intellect on its own cannot cross.
So we can't just figure God out like it's a math problem. I can't just sit down with a calculator and deduce the nature of the Trinity.
No. And Tozer references this ancient concept from medieval mysticism called the cloud of unknowing.
The cloud of unknowing.
It basically means we cannot see God clearly by the light of our own understanding. Our reason can take us to the edge of the cliff, but it can't fly. And here's the really sharp point he makes. If you think you can fully wrap your mind around God, explain all his motives perfectly, and predict his actions with certainty,
then you're probably not talking about God.
Tozer would say you haven't found God. You found an idol.
That's a scary thought. Because we love certainty, don't we? We love data. We want a formula. We want to know exactly how X leads to Y. We want a God who fits neatly into our spreadsheets.
And that desire for control, for a manageable God, is the very root of idolatry. Tozer says that if we can fully understand our God, he is likely a creation of our own fancy.
What does he mean by that?
He means we have projected our own personality onto the sky, magnified it by 1,000, maybe cleaned it up a bit and called it God. But the true God, the God of the Bible, must be incomprehensible to the finite mind, precisely because he is infinite. If he wasn't, he wouldn't be God.
Okay, so does that mean we just give up? Throw our hands in the air and say, well, he's incomprehensible, so let's just go get lunch and not think about it.
Not at all. And this is the beauty of the paradox. While the mind hits a wall, Tozer says that faith can break through that cloud of unknowing. We can know him, but we can't fully comprehend him.
Know him, but not comprehend him.
Think of it like the ocean. You can go to the beach, you can touch the ocean, you can swim in it, you can know it's wet, that it's salty, that it's immensely powerful. You can have a real personal knowledge of the ocean, but you can't hold the entire Atlantic Ocean in a teacup.
We are the teacup.
We are the teacup. And trying to fit God into our minds is like trying to pour the ocean into that teacup. It's just going to overflow and make a mess.
And this leads right into what Tozer calls the idolatry of the mind, which, again, when I hear the word idolatry, I think of, the golden calf in the book of Exodus, or statues in a temple, people bowing down to the sun in ancient times.
Right, physical objects.
But Tozer says we are all at risk of this every single day, even if we are staunch monotheists who would never dream of bowing to a statue.
Yeah, his definition is so convicting. He says idolatry is entertaining thoughts about God that are unworthy of him.
That hits close to home. That's not about what's in a temple. It's about what's in my head.
It brings the definition of idolatry uncomfortably close, doesn't it? It's not about statues. It's about the concept you hold. If we are cruel people, we tend to imagine a cruel, vindictive God who is on our side against our enemies. If we are sentimental, soft people, we imagine a grandfatherly God who doesn't really care about sin and just wants everyone to have a nice time. If we are obsessed with success, we imagine a God who is essentially our cosmic business partner or a corporate sponsor.
So the idol isn't made of wood or stone. It's made of our own thoughts. It's a mental construct.
It is an idol of the intellect. And Tozer warns that this fake God, this God who is base or pure, cruel or kind, based on the moral state of our own minds, that God cannot save us. It has no power. It's just us, talking to ourselves in an echo chamber. A God you invented cannot pull you out of the pit.
So what is the takeaway here? How do we stop building these mental idols? Because it seems like my brain just naturally wants to make God smaller, more understandable, more like me.
I think the very first step to loving God deeply is admitting that he is not exactly like us. We have to stop trying to bring him down to our level. We have to use what Tozer calls like words analogies.
Like words.
We say God is like a father, or God is like a shepherd, or a rock. The Bible is full of them. But we must always remember he transcends those analogies. He is that, but infinitely more. It requires a deep humility. It requires being able to say, I don't fully get it, and being okay with that mystery.
Just being okay with the awe.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack some of these specific attributes that Tozer uses to just shatter our little mental idols. One of the first and most brain-bending ones he dives into is God's existence. Specifically, two big concepts: self-existence and self-sufficiency. Let's start with self-existence.
All right. The fancy theological term here is aseity. It comes from the Latin phrase esse, which literally means from oneself. It means God has no origin.
Which breaks my brain immediately, because everything has an origin. I came from my parents, this microphone came from a factory in China, the factory came from builders, the materials for the microphone came from the earth. Everything comes from something.
Exactly. Everything in our entire experience of reality is derived, it is contingent, it depends on something else to exist. But God is the great I am. He simply is. He is the uncreated one. He didn't come from anywhere. He wasn't made by anyone. He's the source of all being, but he himself has no source.
It's the ultimate philosophical question, right?
Yeah.
Why is there something rather than nothing?
And the Christian answer is,
Yeah.
because there is someone who is pure being itself.
Tozer says this one attribute should shatter human pride.
It absolutely should.
Yeah.
Because if we are derived, that means we are dependent. We are not the center of the universe. We are not the authors of our own story in the ultimate sense. We didn't create ourselves. We didn't choose to be born.
Right.
And when you really grasp this, even a little, it completely changes how you pray.
How so?
Well, you stop coming to God as if you are a business partner negotiating a contract between equals. Hey, God, I'll do this for you if you do that for me. You can't negotiate with the source of your very breath. You come as a derived creature depending entirely on the source. It moves you from a posture of entitlement to one of overwhelming gratitude.
And that leads directly to the next one, which I think is even harder for modern people to swallow and might even make some listeners angry: self-sufficiency.
This is the hard truth. God does not need us.
Okay, I want to stop you right there, because this is where I think Tozer's going to get some serious pushback. I go to church, I listen to the sermons, I hear the songs, and the message I hear constantly is that God needs me. God has no hands but yours. God is counting on you to share the message.
Right, it's a very common message.
It paints a picture of a partnership, like we're co-laborers. But Tozer says, no, that's not right.
Tozer says absolutely not. And he's, frankly, brutal about it. He calls that the charity view of God.
Charity? What do you mean?
Imagine a billionaire who loses everything in a market crash and ends up having to beg on the street corner.
Yeah.
We give him money out of charity. Tozer says we often act like God is that beggar. He's up in heaven, frustrated, wringing his hands, saying, oh no, if Bob doesn't volunteer for the Sunday school team this year, my entire kingdom is going to collapse. We act like God needs our defense, our service, our money to keep his enterprise afloat.
I mean, when you put it that way, it sounds completely ridiculous. But isn't there a partnership? Doesn't he want us to work with him?
There is service, yes. We absolutely get to participate. But here is the theological hard line. God creates everything. Nothing creates him. God sustains everything. Nothing sustains him. If God needed your help, he would be dependent on you. And if he is dependent on you, then in that moment, you are arguably more powerful than he is.
That's the flip. A dependent God isn't a God worth worshiping. If he needs me to survive, I should probably be worshiping myself.
Precisely. Tozer uses an analogy. Think of a surgeon and a scalpel. The patient needs the surgeon to live. The surgeon uses a scalpel to perform the surgery. Does the surgeon need that specific scalpel? No. He could use another one. He could use a laser. He's powerful enough to get the job done with different tools, but he chooses to use that particular scalpel.
So we are the scalpel in that analogy.
We are the scalpel. And I know that sounds humbling, maybe even demeaning to our modern egos. We want to be the co-surgeon. We want to be essential. But Tozer argues that realizing God doesn't need us is actually the most comforting, liberating thing in the world.
Unpack that, because honestly, hearing God doesn't need you on the surface sounds a bit like rejection. It sounds like he's indifferent or aloof.
It's the exact opposite. If God needed you, his love for you might just be manipulation. Think about it. If I need you to give me $100 to pay my rent, I'm going to be really, really nice to you. I'm going to flatter you. I'm going to tell you how great you are. But do I really love you? Or do I just love what you can do for me? Do I love your wallet?
It becomes transactional. You're using me to meet your need.
Right. But because God has everything, he has all the glory, all the joy, all the power. He doesn't need anything from you, which means when he loves you, he actually loves you. He loves you for you, not for your utility. His love is entirely voluntary and gracious. He loves you because He chooses to, not because he has to.
Okay, that actually takes a massive weight off my shoulders. I feel like a lot of religious burnout comes from this implicit idea that we are somehow keeping the lights on in heaven. Like if I take a break or say no to something, God's whole plan fails.
Exactly. Tozer wants you to resign from your self-appointed position as the general manager of the universe. It's not your job. God is self-sufficient. He invites you into the work for your joy and your growth, not for his survival. It transforms service from a heavy burden into a glorious privilege.
That is a huge shift in perspective.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about time. This is another one where our little mental image often fails us. We tend to think of God as just existing for a really, really long time. Like he's just incredibly old.
Right, like he's Gandalf, but a million times older. He's been around forever. But Tozer, using an analogy he borrows from C.S. Lewis, corrects this fundamental misunderstanding. We need to think of eternity not as endless time, but as a different mode of existence entirely. Imagine eternity as an infinite sheet of paper.
Okay, I've got the blank white sheet of paper in my head. A huge, endless piece of paper.
Now take a pencil and draw a short, 1-inch line on that paper. That little line is time. It has a beginning, creation, and an end, Judgment Day. We live on that line. We move from point A to point B moment to moment. We can't see the end of the line from where we are right now. But God is the paper.
He is the paper. He is outside the line, containing the line.
Exactly. So he isn't sliding along the line with us, wondering what's around the next bend. He sees the beginning of the line and the end of the line at the exact same instant. He is looking at the whole picture simultaneously.
So he isn't waiting for tomorrow to happen. For him, it's not tomorrow. He is already there.
He is already there. Tozer says, for God, nothing has happened and nothing will happen. Everything is a Quran. He lives in an eternal now.
What does that mean for me practically? When I'm stressed out about a deadline at work, or I'm waiting for medical test results to come back, or wondering if I'll ever get married, all these things that are in my future.
It means God never hurries. There are no deadlines for God. He is never running late. Tozer says this concept cures the nervousness of modern life. If you are in Christ, God is already in your tomorrow. He has already seen the outcome of the problem that is keeping you awake tonight. You can rest because the one holding you isn't trapped in the timeline with you, panicking about what's next.
God is already in your tomorrow. That is one to write down on the bathroom mirror.
It absolutely is. It changes how you wait. You aren't waiting for God to catch up. You're waiting to catch up to where God already is.
Let's move to section 3. Tozer calls it the unchanging anchor. We live in a world where everything changes. Technology, politics, our culture, our own bodies. I look in the mirror and I see change, not always the good kind. But Tozer introduces this attribute. Immutability.
Immutability. It's a fancy theological word that simply means God does not change. He never differs from himself. He's eternally consistent.
So he doesn't grow. He doesn't learn. Because in our culture, we value growth. We tell people, you need to learn and grow as a person. That's seen as a good thing.
It's a good thing for us because we are imperfect. But think about what growth implies for a perfect being. If God learned something new today, it would mean he didn't know it yesterday, which would mean he wasn't omniscient or perfect yesterday.
Right.
If he grew morally better, he would be improving, which means he wasn't perfectly good before. God cannot change for the better because he is already perfect. And he certainly cannot change for the worse because that would mean he ceases to be God.
I love how Tozer contrasts this divine stability with our human instability, because we are incredibly unstable creatures.
We are. We are so moody. We break promises. We wake up on the wrong side of the bed and it ruins our whole day. We love something one day and we are bored with it the next. Tozer points out that human relationships are often terrifying, precisely because people change. The person who loves you deeply today might grow cold and leave you tomorrow.
That is the root of so much relationship anxiety, isn't it? Will they still love me if I mess up? Will they still love me when I get old and my looks fade?
Exactly. But here is the profound emotional resonance of immutability. God never cools off in his affections for his children. His attitude toward the repentant sinner is the same right now as it was when he sent Christ to die on the cross 2,000 years ago. He doesn't have bad days. He doesn't wake up grumpy. You don't have to tiptoe into his presence and wonder, is God in a good mood today so I can ask for forgiveness?
There is a quote here that just sums it all up for me. We trust a rock, not a wave.
That's it. A wave is powerful, but it's constantly shifting and moving. A rock is immovable. It's your anchor in the storm. And this attribute connects directly to his faithfulness, because he cannot change. He cannot be unfaithful. It's an impossibility.
Now, I want to dig into something specific here because it confuses me sometimes. Tozer talks about the unitary nature of God, and I feel like this is where my mental image of God gets really messy. I tend to think of God as having different modes or different personalities he puts on. Like, sometimes he is in justice mode and he's angry and laying down the law, and then he sees someone repent, so he flips a switch and goes into mercy mode.
Like he has a divine switchboard in heaven. Okay, turn off the anger dial, turn up the love dial.
Exactly. But Tozer says that's fundamentally wrong.
Completely wrong. God doesn't have parts or components. He is one. He is not a collection of attributes that have been glued together. He doesn't suspend his justice in order to be merciful. He is always, at all times, fully just, fully merciful, fully faithful, fully holy. All of his attributes work in perfect, eternal harmony.
That is hard to wrap my head around. How can he be judging sin and loving the sinner at the exact same moment with the same intensity?
That is the profound mystery of the cross, isn't it? At the cross, you see his justice against sin and his mercy towards sinners in their most perfect, unified expression. But for the anxious listener, the person who feels like they've messed up too many times and are on thin ice with God, this means God isn't going to suddenly change his mind about saving you. He isn't going to say, you know what, I'm tired of forgiving this person. He cannot deny himself. As the Bible says, if we are faithless, he remains faithful.
That is rock solid. In a world of waves, that is a rock. Now, let's look at what Tozer calls the greatness of God. We're talking omniscience, wisdom, and power. Let's start with omniscience, the fact that God knows everything. Tozer says this is a double-edged sword. It's both a terror and a comfort.
It is absolutely a terror for the hiding soul. If you are harboring a secret sin, an addiction, a lie, something you've hidden from your spouse, your boss, your best friends, the idea that God knows every thought, every motive, every hidden deed is terrifying. There are no secrets. You are completely and totally exposed before him.
But for the believer, for the person who isn't trying to hide, but is maybe just struggling.
For them, it is a massive, incredible comfort. It means God knows our frame and dust. He knows we are frail. He knows your struggle better than you do. He knows the root of your temptation. And crucially, it means God never learns. He is never surprised.
So when I come to him in prayer with a crisis, I'm not breaking news to him. I'm not running into the throne room saying, God, you won't believe what just happened to me.
Exactly. He has never once in all of eternity said, wow, I didn't see that coming. And the application Tozer draws here is so profound for our prayer life. We don't pray to inform God. We don't pray to tell him what we need as if he's forgotten.
Hey, God, just a friendly reminder, in case you missed it in your busy schedule, my rent is due on Friday. Yeah.
Right. He knows. We go to him because he already knows and he cares.
Yeah.
Prayer becomes less about information transfer and more about relational communion. It's about unburdening yourself to the one who understands you better than you understand yourself. It relieves the pressure of having to explain everything perfectly. He already gets it.
Okay, then there is wisdom. How is that different from just knowing things? I know a lot of trivia, but I definitely wouldn't say I'm wise.
That's a great distinction. Knowledge is having the facts. Omniscience means God has all the facts. But wisdom is the ability to devise perfect ends and achieve them by perfect means. It's knowing what the best ultimate goal is and knowing the absolute perfect path to get there, navigating every obstacle.
And this brings us right to the tough stuff, the problem of pain. If God is so wise and so powerful, why is the world such a mess? Why is my life such a mess sometimes? Tozer addresses this.
He does. He confronts it head on. He contrasts a sort of naive Pollyanna optimism. He calls it the Dr. Pangloss view, referencing a character from Voltaire who blindly insisted that this is the best of all possible worlds with true Christian realism. Tozer admits the world has fallen. It hurts. Bad things happen to good people.
So he's not giving easy answers.
No cheap grace here. But he argues that God's wisdom means he is using even the permitted evil, the things he allows to happen, for an ultimate perfect good that we often can't see from our limited perspective.
It's the trust factor again. It's sitting in the passenger seat when the road is dark and foggy and you can't see 2 feet in front of you.
It is. We want to see the road ahead. We want the full roadmap printed out. But God asks us to trust the driver. Tozer references a verse from Isaiah. I will bring the blind by a way that they knew not. We are often blind to the purpose of our suffering. We can't see why we lost the job or why we got sick. But God is wise. He isn't making mistakes with your life. He isn't improvising or panicking. He has a perfect plan.
And to pull that perfect plan off, he needs power, omnipotence, all-powerful.
All power. And this is a crucial distinction. God expends no energy that must be replenished. When you and I work, we get tired. After this recording, we're going to need to eat lunch and probably have some coffee. We run down.
My personal battery is flashing red half the time, I think.
Me too. But God, he spoke the universe into existence, and he upholds it every second by the word of his power, and he isn't tired. He doesn't need a nap. His resources are infinite.
There's a great story about a man named A.B. Simpson in the notes here. Who was he?
A.B. Simpson was a great Canadian preacher and the founder of the Christian and Missionary Alliance. But at one point in his ministry, he was completely broken in health. He was physically exhausted, mentally drained, on the verge of quitting ministry entirely.
Burned out.
Totally burned out. He went to a gathering and heard a simple spiritual being sung by a woman with a very plain voice. The lyric was, "Nothing is too hard for Jesus. No man can work like him."
And that just clicked for him.
It hit him like a lightning bolt. In that moment, he realized he had been trying to do God's work with his own puny human strength. He was trying to be the battery. He suddenly understood that he didn't need to be strong. He needed to rely on the one who has all strength. It completely revitalized his entire life in ministry. He stopped striving and started abiding.
That is the shift from trying to be the generator to just learning how to plug into the power grid.
And that is how we love Christ more deeply. We stop trying to impress him with our stamina and our efforts, and we start leaning on his omnipotence, which is a much more restful way to live.
Okay, let's unpack this next section because I think this is where the majesty concept that you mentioned at the beginning really hits home. The moral attributes: holiness, justice, and mercy. Tozer talks about the mysterium tremendum.
That is a Latin phrase used by theologians, particularly Rudolf Otto, to describe the numinous, or the holy presence of God. It refers to that overwhelming, non-rational dread you feel when you encounter the truly divine. It's the feeling of being small, of being utterly creaturely.
And we don't like feeling small. Our entire culture is built on telling us to feel big, to be confident, to be the hero of our own story.
Which is why we tend to avoid the concept of holiness. Tozer points out that in the Bible, when human beings get a glimpse of God's raw holiness, they don't chat. They don't give him a high five or ask for a selfie. They fall down as if dead.
Right.
Isaiah cried out, "Woe is me, I am undone, for I am a man of unclean lips." Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Daniel lost all his strength and fell to the ground in a deep sleep.
It is a physical, visceral reaction to holiness. It's like standing too close to a nuclear reactor. Your body just reacts to the sheer power and purity of it.
It is. And Tozer argues that modern Christianity has become far too casual, too chatty. We have lost what he calls spiritual silence. We rush into worship with a lot of noise and smoke machines and loud music and chatter, but we rarely just stop and feel the weight of his holiness. We've domesticated God. We treat God like a buddy, not a consuming fire.
He calls for a recovery of awe, but here's the problem. If God is that holy and I am, well, not, that leads directly to the problem of justice. If God is perfectly holy, he has to hate sin, and I have sin, so we have a problem.
That creates the central tension of the entire Bible. Justice means moral equity. God always acts like himself, and since he is holy, he must punish sin. Tozer makes the point that if a human judge let a convicted murderer go free just because he's a nice guy, we would rightly call that judge corrupt.
So if God just let everyone off the hook and said no big deal, he wouldn't be just. He'd be a corrupt cosmic judge.
Precisely. So the dilemma for all of theology is, how can a just God spare the wicked? How can he let us into heaven without compromising his own perfect justice?
This is the core of the gospel message.
It is. Tozer leans on the classic argument from Anselm of Canterbury here. The solution isn't that God ignores justice. It's not that he looks the other way or sweeps sin under the rug. It's that justice was perfectly satisfied in the person of Christ on the cross. God spares the wicked because he is good, but he does so through the cross so that he remains perfectly just. He doesn't ignore the bill for sin. He pays it himself.
And that's where mercy and grace come in. I have to admit, I use these words interchangeably all the time, but Tozer actually distinguishes them.
He does, and it's a really helpful distinction. Mercy is God's goodness confronting human misery and guilt. It's God looking at your suffering, your mess, your regret, your brokenness, and having compassion. It's his pity. Grace is God's goodness confronting your debt and demerit. It's giving you infinite favor when you deserve infinite punishment.
So mercy sees my wound and stops the bleeding, and grace sees my criminal record and pays the fine.
That's a great way to put it. And Tozer emphasizes what the Bible calls the infinite much more. Where sin abounded, grace did much more abound. You cannot out-sin God's grace. His supply is infinitely larger than your debt.
But we have to receive it right. I feel like a lot of us, even as Christians, live as if we are still on trial, constantly pleading our case.
Yes, Tozer notes that many Christians plead for mercy as if they don't actually expect to get it. They beg and beg, "Oh God, please, please forgive me," as if they have to convince a reluctant judge. But faith admits us to the banquet hall. We should walk in with confidence, not because we are good, but because we know He is merciful and His Son has paid our entrance fee.
Moving on to what Tozer calls the heart of God, love. This is the big one, right? God is love. We see it on bumper stickers. We see it on billboards. It's probably the most famous attribute. But Tozer has a critical warning here. He says, God is love does not mean love is God.
This is such a subtle but incredibly dangerous error in our modern culture. We tend to equate God with a warm, fuzzy feeling. We think, whatever feels like love to me, that must be God. And so we end up worshiping the emotion of love itself. If something makes us feel good, if an action feels loving by our definition, we call it holy.
Which completely destroys God's personality. It turns him into just a vibe, an abstract principle.
Exactly. God is a person, not an abstract emotion. Love is an attribute of God. It describes how He acts. But He defines what love is. Our fluctuating concept of love doesn't define who He is. We don't look at our feelings to define God. We look at the character of God in Scripture to define what true love is.
So what is divine love then, if it's not just a fuzzy feeling?
Tozer breaks it down beautifully into 3 parts. First, it is goodwill. He wants what is truly best for us, always. Second, it is emotional identification. He suffers with us. He isn't a stoic, unfeeling statue. He feels our pain. The Bible says Jesus was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And third, and I absolutely love this part, He takes pleasure in the object of His love.
God takes pleasure in us, not just tolerates us or pities us, but actually enjoys us.
He enjoys His people. Tozer uses this wonderful phrase. He calls Him the friendly God.
Friendly. That is such a simple, almost mundane word, but we rarely use it for God. We say, holy, mighty, awesome King, but friendly.
It sounds almost too casual, doesn't it? But Tozer argues it's profoundly true. He isn't aloof or distant. He is hospitable. And he says He acts like Jesus. If you want to know what God's love looks like in practice, look at how Jesus treated the weak, the outcast, the leper, the children. He was friendly to them.
There's a devotional thought here that really stuck with me. The greatness of God rouses fear within us, but His goodness encourages us not to be afraid of Him.
That is the central paradox of Christian faith. We tremble because He is holy, but we draw near because He is good. We run to the consuming fire that should, by all rights, destroy us because we know by faith that the fire is love.
Now, Section 7 gets into the deep waters of theology. We've covered a lot of ground God's power, His knowledge, His location outside of time. But this all leads to the ultimate headache-inducing debate in philosophy and theology. If God is this big and this in charge, am I just a robot?
The sovereignty versus free will debate. The immovable object versus the irresistible force.
Right. If God is writing the entire story, do I really have a pen in my hand? Or am I just reciting lines from a script I didn't write?
Tozer tackles this in Chapter 2, and I think he offers one of the most helpful, practical visual analogies I've ever encountered. He moves away from the abstract philosophical logic and gives us a picture, the ocean liner.
Okay, set the scene for us. I love a good visual.
Okay, picture a massive ocean liner. Let's call it the SS History. It is leaving the port of New York, and it is bound for the port of Liverpool. The destination is locked in. The captain, who is God, has determined that this ship will reach Liverpool. That is sovereignty. The ultimate destination of history is guaranteed.
Okay, so the ship is the timeline of history. It has a predetermined destination. Where am I in this picture?
You are a passenger on the deck of that ship.
Yeah.
Now tell me about your freedom as a passenger. Can you jump off the ship?
Well, I guess I could, but that would be a very bad idea, and then I'm not part of the voyage anymore.
Right, so stick to the deck for a second. While on the ship, you can walk to the bow. You can walk to the stern. You can go to the buffet and choose chicken or fish. You can play shuffleboard. You can go below deck and take a nap. You have hundreds, maybe thousands of real choices you can make every hour. You are genuinely free to move about the cabin.
But I can't steer the ship.
No, you cannot hijack the ship. You can't march up to the bridge and turn the wheel. And this is the crucial part of the analogy. If you decide to walk west, back toward New York, while the ship is sailing east toward Liverpool, where do you end up?
I end up in Liverpool, just a little more tired than everyone else.
Exactly. Your little westward walk on the deck doesn't stop the ship's massive eastward momentum. Tozer is saying that our freedom is real, but it is contained freedom. It exists within the larger sphere of God's sovereign purposes.
I really like that. It respects the fact that I make real choices. I chose what to eat for breakfast this morning. I chose to be kind or rude to my spouse. Those are real moral choices with real consequences. But it also says I'm not powerful enough to ruin God's ultimate plan for history.
It's the ultimate antidote to anxiety. How many of us lie awake at night thinking, if I make the wrong choice about this job or this relationship, I'm going to ruin my life forever? Or on a bigger scale, if this election goes the wrong way, the world's going to end.
That's the Atlas complex. We feel like we're holding the entire world on our shoulders.
The ocean liner analogy says, relax. You are responsible for your conduct on the deck. You are responsible to trust the captain. But you are not responsible for steering the ship through the storm. The ship is going to make it to its destination.
Whoever is on God's side is on the winning side.
That's the quote from Tozer. It's not a gamble. The ship isn't wondering if it will get there. It's a done deal.
So we have covered these massive mind-bending attributes. We're beginning to see God as self-sufficient, unchanging, wise, holy, loving, sovereign. But the question remains, how do we apply this? How do we live this out today? Because it's so easy to listen to this, nod along, feel smart, and then go right back to yelling at traffic and being anxious about our 401k.
And this is where Tozer shows he's not just a theologian, but a pastor. This is section 8, the open secret. He doesn't just leave us with high thoughts. He calls us to a high life. The secret is simply this: acquaint thyself with God. But he gives 6 practical, and I have to warn you, very challenging conditions for really knowing God in this way.
They rarely are easy, are they? Let's walk through them. What's the first one?
The first is forsake sins.
Right out of the gate. You can't hold on to high-handed, willful rebellion and expect to be intimate with a perfectly holy God. You can't say, I want to know you, God, while you're actively punching him in the face with your lifestyle choices.
Exactly. He says God will not dwell in a divided heart. The second condition is utter committal. This is faith in its truest sense. It's an emotional and volitional attachment to Christ. It's going all in. It's burning the ships behind you so there's no going back.
Okay, number 3.
Third, die to self.
And that's probably the hardest one for most of us.
I think so. It means throwing open the doors of your personality to the Holy Spirit and saying, I am not the boss of me anymore. It means giving up the right to be right, giving up the need for recognition, giving up your agenda for your life.
Ouch. Okay, number 4.
Fourth, repudiate cheap values.
This is so relevant for our culture today.
Unbelievably so. We have to consciously detach from what the unbelieving world loves: fame, wealth, power, status, likes on social media. We have to stop loving the toys of the world if we want to truly love the maker of the world. As the Bible says, you can't be in love with the world and in love with God at the same time. You have to choose. Fifth, meditate on majesty. And Tozer explicitly notes this is hard work for the modern mind. We are so distracted. We are so busy. Our phones are buzzing. Our brains have the attention span of a goldfish. We have to make a deliberate act of the will to carve out time and silence to think on God's greatness. It means turning off this deep dive, putting down the phone, and just thinking about who God is.
And finally, number 6.
Sixth, service. The more we know God, the more we must serve suffering humanity. Mysticism that doesn't lead to mission is just selfish navel-gazing. True awe for God will inevitably lead to active love for your neighbor. If you really see the majesty of God, you will see the people he loves, and you will want to serve them.
Tozer has this beautiful phrase for the result of this kind of lifestyle. He says it creates a heaven to go to heaven in.
Isn't that lovely? It means you start experiencing the joy and peace and reality of heaven right now on this earth. You don't have to wait until you die to be with God. You can walk with him today. You are actively preparing for an eternity of companionship by starting now.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it all back to the beginning. Why does this matter? Why should the listener care about aseity or immutability or the sovereignty of God?
Because the low view of God that is plaguing modern faith is killing us.
Yeah.
It's making us spiritually anemic. It leaves us weak, fearful, and easily manipulated by the winds of culture. If your God is small, your problems will always seem giant. But if your God is majestic, your problems, while still real, are put in their proper perspective. They become manageable. We need to abandon the buddy God and rediscover the captain of the sovereign ship.
And we are not just puppets on that ship. We are passengers invited to know the captain intimately. That is the invitation.
That's the whole point. And here's a final provocative thought from Tozer to leave you with. He suggests that if we knew the secret thoughts of our religious leaders about God, what they really believe in their heart of hearts, we could accurately predict the future of the church.
That is a heavy, heavy thought.
But let's flip it around and make it personal for the listener. If someone could see your secret mental image of God, not what you say in church, not the songs you sing, but what you really think deep down when you close your eyes, what would they predict for your future?
Wow. If my secret image of God is small and needy and unreliable, my future is probably going to be anxious and unstable. If my God is majestic and sovereign and good, my future is secure no matter what happens on the deck of the ship.
Exactly. It determines everything.
That is a challenge worth chewing on. Don't just listen to this deep dive and move on to the next thing. Take some time this week. Meditate on the majesty. Maybe read Psalm 145 or a chapter from this book. Let the awe of who God is wash over you. It is, after all, the most important thing about you.
It changes everything.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We will catch you on the next one.
Going, Grace.